Hi, I'm a possum and I find garbage. Today's garbage is Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter, an unfunny comedy ostensibly about Jesus Christ hunting vampires, but it's really about some guy named Jesus Christ, but who looks nothing like him, fighting goths in bad makeup. I actually saw this movie once maybe 15 years ago, but the copy I saw was borrowed from a friend. But then I bought my own copy after finding it at a gas station somewhere in Pennsylvania. So this is now a gas station movie, and it goes along with the gas station burrito, which gave me gas station gas. This movie was made on a budget of 100,000 Canadian dollars. I guess someone had to buy a camera, but where'd the other $99,000 go? Up the director's nose? I always figured snow would be cheap in Canada. Jesus Christ!
It don't smell like farts in here.
It smells like a destruction of property lawsuit to me. Who do you think you are?
The creator of the universe, that's who.
Oh yeah.
I'm hunting vampires. Hast thou seen any?
No, there ain't no vampires in here. That's because vampires don't exist. Now why don't you go next door and bother my neighbor Sasquatch?
Because he's Jewish.
He is?
I don't know. Probably.
Well, go bother him anyway. I'm reviewing a movie here.
Okay.
The movie starts with random driving shots accompanied by layered voiceovers of some preacher shaming people and a guy blaming God for his problems.
Are you there, God? Why don't you answer me?
Then we cut to some creepy weirdo who shows up to yell deep-sounding gibberish at the camera.
This is the empty house of your soul. Its foundations are built on your childhood, and climbing a lifetime, you may never reach its top floor.
So the camera enters the house and we get the title sequence and opening credits. And then we're treated to some terrible synthesizer music as some woman gets bit by a vampire while putting up no fight whatsoever. The vampire lady then steals the car and parks it somewhere, then makes a call on her ancient cell phone.
Where have all our lesbians gone?
Maybe they went to Dillard's to buy some Birkenstocks. Then we cut to some preacher named Father Eustace running across the street to tell another preacher named Father Albin, who happens to also be a punk rocker, I guess, that another member of their congregation has been killed.
We can no longer stand idly by and allow these children of God to be slain by these agents of the devil.
Father Eustace tells Father Albin they need to find somebody to fight whoever's killing all these women. So Father Albin gets on a moped with some other preacher guy, and they ride to the beach where we see Jesus Christ himself performing a baptism. Yeah, Jesus is just kind of there on this Canadian beach, I guess. Jesus offers them some lemonade because the filmmakers missed the opportunity for a water into wine joke, and they tell him he needs to fight the evildoers.
I'm here to build a kingdom, Albin, my father's kingdom. I cannot rush to the battlements before the foundations are laid, or else the walls will surely collapse.
But then 3 vampire chicks show up and stomp all over his sandcastle. Some ridiculous bongo music plays as one of the vampires kicks Jesus in the balls. Then a kung fu fight starts. Jesus gets sand kicked into his eyes, and then he gets knocked over, so he tells the 2 priests to bless the lake. But then the 2 other vampires bite them. Jesus throws 2 of the vampires into the lake, and I guess they burn to death in the holy water or something. But the 3rd vampire gets away, and now the 2 priests are dead. Jesus rides his moped to the barber and gets his hair cut and his beard shaved, and also gets his ear pierced for some reason. And then a tedious and poorly choreographed musical number starts.
Here I am at my destination, yet to stop this exsanguination.
This is how Jesus looks for the rest of the movie, by the way. We're only 11 minutes in, and now Jesus doesn't even look like how we typically imagine Jesus anymore. And it doesn't seem to serve any narrative purpose. I even listened to the director's commentary on the DVD, and they don't give any explanation. The only reason I can think of for why they did this is because they didn't want to bother with the wig and fake beard for the rest of the movie. So now Jesus just looks like that guy that stabbed me in a bar fight last year.
Got to halt this abomination.
So I guess the purpose of the song is to show Jesus going around healing people, because we need to be reminded that this is Jesus since he doesn't look like him anymore. After the song, Jesus meets Father Eustace and they walk to some apartment which Father Eustace explains is maintained by the church for visiting clergy, and tells him that he can stay there. Jesus and Eustace then go to a diner or something where Jesus explains that Father Albin and the other guy were killed. Father Eustace shows them some photos of some of the church members who went missing recently, and Jesus recognizes one of them as one of the vampires who attacked him. Eustace explains that all the victims so far have been lesbians.
The church has been unwilling to act on this matter because of the lifestyle of these women.
Jesus asks him if them all being lesbians might have something to do with the vampires being able to walk around in the daylight. I just assumed they could walk in the daylight because filming with sunlight is cheaper and easier than setting up lights. Eustace tells him he has to figure that out, and he gives Jesus some money.
I'll need to buy some wood for stakes.
So by now you might have noticed that just about all of the dialogue in this movie is dubbed over in post, kind of like another movie I reviewed. So almost all of it is out of sync with the mouth movements. I looked at the production stills on the DVD's special features and none of them show any audio equipment. But there are a couple photos where you can see their camera, which appears to be a Pilard Bolex H16T, a 16mm film camera which came out in the 1930s. These cameras use spring-wound clockwork mechanisms, so they weren't precise enough to maintain a consistent frame rate. This made it impossible to maintain synchronization with on-location recorded sound. And the fact that the spring-wound mechanism could only record for about 30 seconds of footage at a time meant that they would have to keep track of hundreds of audio clips to sync them with hundreds of takes, which would have been a huge pain in the ass for such a low-budget production. So I guess that explains why they didn't bother with microphones and just dubbed all the dialogue later. But it's not just the dialogue. The movie's sound design is almost non-existent. Now, in a real movie, just about everything you hear is a fake sound effect that was added in post. But I'm not just talking about things like spaceships and laser guns. Even mundane sounds like footsteps and clothes ruffling are all faked. It's called Foley, and there are people in Hollywood who do nothing but record Foley sounds for movies. So even if they didn't have the ability to record on-location sound, there's still no excuse for not having sound effects because doing it in post is standard practice. But this movie has almost no audio other than stock punching and swishing sounds for the fight scenes and music to disguise the silent moments. What you need to understand is that the audio of a movie is arguably more important than the visuals because that's the sort of thing you only notice when it's done poorly and sounds unnatural. Most of this movie takes place in a city, but we never hear cars driving by. We sometimes get ambient street noise, but it's not synced up with the on-screen action, which makes it obvious that's just some noise they recorded separately and added in later. Look at this scene. We hear the sound of the motorcycle engine, but we don't hear the sound of the wheels on the dirt. The car is completely silent when the stunt double drives over it. It sounds like a bathtub when he drives through a puddle, and they even use the same sound effect twice in a row when Jesus gets kicked and then falls to the ground. I could understand if this movie was made by 5 teenagers over a weekend, but this movie had a budget of 100,000 Canadian dollars. I mean, that's a tiny amount for a feature film, but still, it's not like a YouTube video made entirely by one guy.
My son, why dost thou torture thyself with bad movies?
Because
Baseton, Oxbones, Alcalac, Bull Bunny, Cameron Delshaw, Cortez, Scientist, Diesel Weasel, Duke, Snuggles, Eduardo Sanchez, Enrique Vidari, Fractal Soraya, Gopo, Gumma Flame, Gothic Stretch, Deep Busy, Hayren Independent, and Zigzag, Jay Lee, Jimmy Jam, Joe Berg, John Cleveland, Josh Leifert, Camilla Schwartz, KNO 1000, Let's Quit in Quebec, Levi Judge, Lee, Lil, Durante, Lipstick, Marco McFire, Nathaniel Davis, Noble Team 33, Paco Pumped Up, Ricky Baruga, Robert Bishop, Raffle Copper, Salter, Sir Badass, Miranda Nightlord, Thomas Brown, Tiberian Luke, Tony Belmonte, Toxic Masculinity, Suzunio, Twilight City Studios YouTube channel, Boomar Superflood, Wilker Basie, and Zenith. Give me money to do so. Come with me.
Where are we going?
You will see.
So what are we doing at Chick-fil-A? You gotta use a chicken sandwich to make some kind of metaphor about my life or something?
No, I was hungry.
Oh. And you needed me to come with you because...
But that's a good idea. Behold this sandwich. Between 2 soft buns is a hot, crispy chicken breast, which itself is crunchy on the outside, but soft and juicy on the inside, just like your life.
Oh, I get it. I should go burn down in a clinic.
What? No.
No?
What's wrong with thou?
I just thought...
The sandwich is soft and juicy on the inside, but crunchy on the outside. Think about it.
I can't think and you know it.
Metaphor.
You left your sandwich. I guess he's gonna make me walk home.
We see Jesus carrying the wood he just bought, and he's walking because the filmmakers forgot that he has a moped, when he's suddenly confronted by his worst enemy.
Hello, Jesus. You don't know us because we've never talked to you before. We are the atheists.
The atheists say they're there to kill him, so Jesus gets ready to fight.
Let's get on with the conversion.
So then an army of Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins wannabes comes pouring out of a Jeep like it's a clown car, and they all gang up to attack Jesus. Not with facts and logic, but with fists and baseball bats. Jesus beats up the first wave, but then more come. Then Jesus beats up the second wave, then even more come. Then Jesus beats up the third wave, then even more come. Then Jesus beats up the fourth wave, then a kung fu guy comes up, swings a stick around, then Jesus kicks him in the face. Then the two lead atheists try to attack Jesus after he had already beat up like 30 people, and they fight as a family has a picnic in the background.
I don't believe it.
So Jesus beats up all the atheists, then picks up his wood and goes about his business. That scene had nothing at all to do with the plot, by the way. It just pointlessly ate up 5 minutes of screen time. And this movie is only 80 minutes, so that's like a whole 16th of the movie wasted on a poorly choreographed fight scene which isn't even funny. You know, that afternoon they spent filming a pointless fight scene at the park could have been spent planting trees and picking up garbage. So Jesus continues walking. We get to watch him just walk for about 50 seconds, so that's even more time wasted. And then he finally makes his way back to his apartment where he sees a girl with a gun. Jesus assumes she's there to kill him, so he kicks the gun out of her hand, and then a fight ensues. The girl pins him down and tells him she's on his side, and shows him her business card. Mary Magnum, you get it? So then they go to a sauna, and Mary Magnum tells Jesus about the science of vampires, and that she's trying to find some guy named Dr. Pretorius. So they just get up and leave, but Mary tells him he's too conspicuous in his robes, so they need to get him some more modern clothes. Jesus and Mary go to some kind of thrift store, and Mary finds some vaguely racist salt and pepper shakers. They're not important. According to the director's commentary, they just found them and thought they were funny and decided to put them in the movie. You know what else would have been funny if they put it in the movie? Some comedy. Then we get that cliche gag where one character tries on different outfits and another disapproves of them. Finally, Mary picks out a shirt for Jesus, but then that vampire lady comes in. Her name is Maxine, by the way. Jesus and Mary hide in a changing room as she asks the store owner where some guy named Johnny is. The store owner tells her he's at the hospital. Then as Jesus and Mary go to follow her, the movie wastes another 30 seconds showing them haggling over the shirt with the store owner. Jesus and Mary get on a motorcycle and follow Maxine to the hospital. She goes in through a door in the parking garage, but when they try to go in after her, they find the door locked. So they go through a sewer grate and somehow end up in the air ducts. They crawl around for a while and find Dr. Pretorius overacting as he peels skin off a lesbian.
Man of science like myself, the apostles of the new millennium, can make his words flesh.
Conveniently, Dr. Pretorius talks to himself and explains how he's enabling the vampires to walk in daylight by grafting lesbian skin onto them. Yes, that's actually the plot. Vampires get the skin of lesbians grafted onto themselves, and this somehow makes them immune to the sun. I guess nobody told them they can just go down to Walmart and get some copper tone for like $7.
Then some vampire guy named Johnny Golgotha comes in and talks to Dr. Pretorius about nothing. And then Maxine comes in, I guess because it took her so long to make her way to the room that Jesus and Mary got there before her despite having to crawl their way through the air ducts. Dr. Pretorius tells them they're running low on lesbian skin, so they go out to find more lesbians. Jesus and Mary follow Maxine and Johnny to the local lesbian drop-in center, and then the director's mom catches the vampires eating the lesbians and just stands there screaming instead of running away to get help. until Jesus and Mary come in. Johnny tells Jesus to close his eyes. Jesus complies, and then Johnny punches him in the face. Then Jesus and Mary chase the vampires up to the roof. Mary goes to fight Maxine, and Johnny throws a chair at Jesus. Mary gets bit by Maxine pretty much immediately, and Johnny beats the bejesus out of Jesus. After getting kicked in the ribs about a dozen times, Jesus finally passes out as he watches Mary get her blood sucked out by Maxine. Then we cut back to that creepy narrator misquoting Luke 10:30.
This same question a certain lawyer asked of our Lord in Luke 10:30. Who is my neighbor?
Then we see Jesus stumbling around with a bleeding head wound because the vampires didn't kill him for some reason. Actually, I lied. There was no reason. So Jesus falls over in the street and begs the people passing by for help, but they all just ignore him, including the inexplicable Australian police officer.
Please, help me.
Sorry, mate. My compassion ended at 6 p.m.
But then Jesus is found by a drag queen. He wakes up in bed and the drag queen wipes his face while reciting a poem or something, then kisses him. I guess the fact that it's a drag queen is supposed to automatically make it funny. So after yet another pointless diversion, we cut to Jesus finally using the wood he bought to carve some steaks. He then goes back to the diner and he's given a dessert that he didn't order, and God talks to him through it.
You need help, Jesus, and I have not forsaken you.
Oh, it's you, Dad.
God tells Jesus to call the Sage of the Wrestling Ring, and then we see a plane landing. A masked luchador named Santos and his assistant Gloria Oddbottom come out to meet Jesus. They get harassed by paparazzi, and then they get in the car with Santos' old manager for some reason. The manager gives Santos 2 tickets to the new act he's managing, and then they go back to the thrift store. Jesus and Santos threaten the owner to tell them where Johnny's hiding, because that's something Jesus would do. He tells them Johnny's out of town at some place called The Point, and then they leave. We then cut to Dr. Pretorius carrying another lesbian through a junkyard and stuffing her into the trunk of a car. Then we cut to some place called Dominion Tavern, where they watch some guy named Blind Jimmy Leper scatting Star Wars names for some reason. Oops, I lied again. There was no reason. Jesus and Santos come in and meet up with Santos' old manager. Santos watches 2 lesbians make out, then Jesus goes on stage and embarrasses himself.
I was born in a manger.
Then Jesus turns around and sees the mirror and realizes that nobody in the audience has a reflection, so it turns out the bar is full of vampires. Hey, if the vampires are all covered in lesbian skin, wouldn't the lesbian skin still have a reflection? I mean, if it makes them immune to sunlight, then by the same logic, f*** it. I'm thinking harder about this movie than the people who made it. Anyway, a fight ensues. There's this one moment during a fight where Jesus grabs a vampire and breathes in her face, and then it cuts to this unnecessarily long flashback of him ordering a shawarma with extra garlic to explain the gag in the most awkward way possible. It's not funny and it adds nothing to the movie, except pain. Jesus gets kicked down some stairs, and then Santos confesses his love to one of the lesbians he watched making out. But then Maxine blows glitter in his face and knocks him out. Jesus ends up in the bathroom where he impales a vampire with a plunger. Are vampires made of Play-Doh or something? Half the things they get stabbed with aren't even sharp. Johnny karate chops Gloria Oddbottom and carries her off. We don't see what happens to Santos, but I guess he got kidnapped too. Jesus realizes everyone's gone, leaves the bar, and then instead of immediately rushing off to rescue them, he takes the time to touch up his hair. We cut to Jesus picking up his steaks, and then he talks to a plastic statue of the Virgin Mary in a scene that's ultimately pointless. And then he hears a knock at the door and sees Mary Magnum through the peephole. He opens the door and gets ambushed. It turns out Mary Magnum is a vampire now. Johnny tells Jesus they have Santos and demands he turn himself in, so he leaves with them. Then we get the narrator yelling at himself in a mirror, and then we cut to the Jesus and the vampires arriving at the junkyard, and Father Eustace is there. It turns out he's a vampire too. Johnny knocks out Jesus, then Jesus wakes up and finds himself tied to 2 cars. Father Eustace explains through the dirt on the lens that they offered him power, and explains that the reason they've been collecting skin from lesbians to graft onto themselves is because lesbians are deviants.
I've got a question though. Why lesbians? They're deviants. No one will miss them.
This makes no sense. If you wanted to skin a bunch of people who no one cares about, you would be better off skinning male domestic violence victims. So the vampire starts stretching Jesus Braveheart style, then Santos just breaks the chain and frees himself, because he couldn't just do that earlier for some reason. Oh that was another lie. There was no reason. He breaks Maxine's spine the same way Bane did to Batman, and then he chews through Jesus' ropes, freeing him. Another kung fu fight breaks out, Jesus knocks out Father Eustace, and then Mary Magnum comes riding up on her motorcycle, kicks Jesus, and tries to run him over, but then Santos rescues him. Santos gives Jesus a steak, which I guess he just found somewhere, and then more vampires pop out, and then Jesus immediately loses the steak Santos gave him. And then the press shows up, and Dr. Pretorius watches Jesus fight the vampires on the news, but then Jesus shows up in the same room.
But you're at the wrecking yard! On TV live!
I'm everywhere.
So thanks to Jesus' power to be in multiple places at the same time, which he never used before because it would have been inconvenient to the plot, he is able to fight Dr. Pretorius and Johnny at the same time while Santos fights the two vampire ladies. This goes on for a while until Jesus cuts Dr. Pretorius' neck open, but then Jesus heals him, so Dr. Pretorius eats the heart out of the corpse he was operating on, and then attacks Jesus again, and I guess Jesus punches him to death, but we don't get to see it because it match cuts to him punching Johnny. And that's the last time we see Dr. Pretorius. He just kind of disappears from the movie after that. So we cut back to Jesus fighting Johnny, and Johnny manages to restrain Jesus long enough for Father Eustace to wake up and stab him with the stake. Then the sun goes down, and Jesus starts shooting light out of the hole in his chest, disintegrating the vampires. Santos takes the mask off the lesbian he met at the bar, and she's not a vampire anymore, and neither is Mary Magnum. Mary asks Jesus to bring Maxine back to life because they're in love now, I guess. I'm not sure when that happened. I'm also not sure when my life fell apart. Then Jesus asks the lesbian from the bar if she's a lesbian.
But Maggie, aren't you a lesbian?
No, I'm bi.
Yes! Yes! Ha-ha!
Then the superfluous narrator shows up again, and then we cut to Jesus giving some kind of sermon at a gazebo at the park. And then the phone starts ringing. Everyone pulls out their phones, then Jesus finally realizes it's his phone that's ringing after a tediously long time. He answers it and tells some guy named JP that he's too busy to talk right now, and hangs up, making that entirely pointless. Actually, you know what the point was? To waste my time. Then Jesus gives everyone some terrible advice about trusting themselves to do the right thing.
You know what's right. Trust yourselves.
Because no one has ever done anything bad under a misguided sense of moral superiority, right? So then Jesus and Santos high-five, and the movie's theme song, which makes no sense, starts playing.
It's all good. It's all right. Everybody gets laid tonight.
We see Santos get on the plane with the bar lesbian. Jesus grabs Gloria's ass. Then the plane takes off and the movie ends. So that's Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter.
So hast thou learned anything about thy life?
No, because your crispy chicken sandwich metaphor made no sense.
Doth it make sense now?
Thanks for watching my video. Subscribe if you're not already. Like this video. Leave a comment because the algorithm likes it. Support me on Patreon and send me your fan art on Facebook. Bye.